Monica had always dreamed of giving her children a childhood filled with memories of outdoor adventures, playhouses, and hideaways. Having spent her own childhood in a countryside home where she and her siblings played for hours in their backyard, she was determined to recreate a bit of that magic for her own family. She and her husband Tom had recently moved to a quiet, well-manicured suburb, excited by the promise of a friendly, family-oriented neighborhood where their children could grow up safely. The house was spacious, the neighbors seemed welcoming, and the backyard, a lush, green space dotted with towering oaks, seemed perfect for their plans. Little did they know that their vision for the perfect family home would soon clash with unexpected neighborhood rules. After settling in, Monica and Tom decided that the best way to personalize their new space would be to build a small playhouse for their two young children. Their daughter, Emma, was especially excited about the idea, often talking about her castle and asking when they could start building it. For Monica, Emma's enthusiasm was infectious. She envisioned a modest but magical space for the kids, something painted in warm, pastel colors with a little porch, a door they could open and close, and windows that could look out onto the backyard. Tom, though less sentimental, was equally supportive. He spent several weekends designing the playhouse, ensuring it was safe and stable, a proper miniature structure that would stand the test of time. Finally, they picked a spot for the playhouse, a corner of the yard under the shade of a sprawling oak tree, providing shelter from the sun and a sense of privacy. The spot was out of view from the street and blended naturally with the landscape of their yard. It's perfect, Monica thought, pleased with the choice, confident that their kids would have many joyful hours here. With plans finalized, they spent the next few weekends building the structure together. Tom handled the heavy lifting, setting up the frame, drilling and hammering with precision, while Monica painted the panels in a soft sky blue with white trims. Emma watched with eager anticipation, occasionally helping by handing her parents tools or painting small sections, and her little brother Ben toddled around in excitement, though too young to fully understand what was going on. Neighbors would sometimes wave as they passed, some even stopping by to chat and ask about their project. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, commented on how lovely it was to see a family working together on something special. "It reminds me of the good old days," she said with a nostalgic smile, adding that her own father had built her a treehouse when she was young. Monica cherished moments like these, feeling reassured that they had moved into a community where families supported one another. Even some of the neighborhood teenagers seemed intrigued, occasionally watching from afar as Tom and Monica worked. The playhouse, although small, symbolized much more than a place to play. To Monica, it represented a place where her children could let their imaginations run free, where they could dream up magical adventures, playhouse, and have their own private space within the safety of their home. By the time they finished, it was everything they had hoped for, a cozy, charming little structure that fits seamlessly into the landscape, adding character and warmth to their yard. The playhouse quickly became the heart of the backyard. Emma immediately took ownership of it, bringing in her dolls, toy kitchen, and a few favorite books, while Ben delighted in following his sister inside and pretending to cook imaginary meals. They spent hours there, lost in their games, and for Monica, watching them play was pure joy. Every afternoon after school, Emma would dart into the backyard, barely able to contain her excitement as she rushed to her castle. Seeing her children play in a space built with their own hands was immensely rewarding for both Monica and Tom. They felt a sense of pride, knowing they had created something lasting and special for their kids. But then, just days after the playhouse was finished, an unexpected letter arrived in their mailbox, bearing the official logo of the neighborhood's homeowners association. Monica was surprised to see it. She hadn't thought much about the homeowner association beyond the usual rules about garbage pickup schedules and seasonal yard decorations. She and Tom had briefly reviewed the homeowner association guidelines when they moved in, but nothing had seemed restrictive or unusual. After all, the neighborhood was known for its relaxed atmosphere and family-friendly environment. She opened the letter, expecting it to be a welcome note or an announcement of some upcoming neighborhood event. Instead, her eyes skimmed over a short but curt message, formally requesting the immediate removal of their children's playhouse. The letter stated that the structure was in violation of neighborhood aesthetic guidelines, claiming that it obstructed the natural visibility of the yard and could potentially lower the aesthetic appeal of surrounding properties. Monica blinked, rereading the letter in disbelief. How could something as innocuous as a children's playhouse possibly violate aesthetic guidelines? The playhouse was tucked away in the backyard, completely out of sight from the road or neighboring properties, and blended naturally with the landscape. She felt a surge of frustration, mingled with confusion. When Tom returned from work that evening, Monica showed him the letter, and they read it together, exchanging bewildered looks. "This doesn't make any sense," Tom said, shaking his head. "We've checked the guidelines, and nothing we built goes against them. Besides, the playhouse isn't even visible from the street." He suggested that they call the homeowner association the next day to clarify the situation, convinced that this had to be a mistake or a misunderstanding. The next morning, Monica called the homeowner association office, hoping for a quick resolution. She was connected to a representative named Linda, who listened as Monica explained that the playhouse was in their backyard, discreetly placed and well within their property lines. Linda, however, remained firm in her response, reiterating that the playhouse had been deemed non-compliant with neighborhood standards and would need to be removed or face escalating fines. Monica pressed for specifics, asking how it violated the rules, but Linda only repeated that it was an obstruction that set an undesirable precedent for non-standard structures. Feeling increasingly frustrated, Monica asked if there was any way to appeal the decision, hoping that there might be a process for reconsideration. Linda confirmed that appeals could be filed but warned that they rarely resulted in reversals. Monica was taken aback. It felt as if the homeowner association was determined to enforce this ruling regardless of logic or fairness. Nonetheless, she decided to pursue the appeal. She couldn't fathom the idea of dismantling the playhouse and disappointing her children over what seemed like an arbitrary decision. That evening, Monica and Tom gathered their thoughts, preparing to write an appeal. They listed out the facts. The playhouse was a small structure, carefully designed to blend with the backyard landscape, positioned in a way that wasn't visible from the street or neighboring yards. They highlighted the support they'd received from neighbors who had admired their project and even stopped by to express their enthusiasm. They were careful to keep the tone respectful, focusing on their desire to contribute positively to the neighborhood and create a safe, imaginative space for their children. The following week, they submitted the appeal to the homeowner association, attaching photos of the playhouse to demonstrate how unobtrusive it was. Monica felt a glimmer of hope, believing that the homeowner association board would see reason and recognize that their request was unreasonable. She even collected a few signatures from neighbors who supported them, hoping to show that the playhouse wasn't seen as an obstruction by those who actually lived nearby. However, days later they received another letter from the homeowner association, denying their appeal without further explanation. This time the letter stated that they had 2 weeks to remove the playhouse or face daily fines. Monica was devastated. She felt as though she was up against an unmovable wall, a faceless organization more concerned with enforcing arbitrary rules than considering the reality of individual families. As Monica looked out at the playhouse one afternoon, watching her children play and laugh within its small wooden walls, she resolved not to give up. The rejection letter from the homeowner association sat heavily on Monica's desk, stark and unyielding in its tone. The words non-compliant structure and removal required echoed in her mind, each one feeling like a blow to the dream she and Tom had built for their children. As she stared at the paper, frustration simmered into determination. There had to be a way to reason with the homeowner association, she thought. This playhouse was more than just wood and nails. It was a labor of love and a symbol of family bonding. Giving up on it wasn't an option. Monica knew she needed a new approach if she wanted to stand a chance against the homeowner association's rigid stance. The first thing she did was research other cases where homeowners had successfully challenged homeowner association decisions. She discovered stories of homeowners who had faced similar battles over seemingly trivial things: flower beds, garden ornaments, even the color of their door frames. In some instances, these homeowners had managed to reach compromises, while in others they had won outright. Bolstered by these stories, Monica felt her resolve harden. She reached out to neighbors, hoping to rally support from those who had shown interest in the playhouse project, or who had been friendly when she and Tom moved in. To her relief, several neighbors were more than willing to sign a petition expressing their support. Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor who had complimented the playhouse earlier, was especially enthusiastic. She even suggested gathering more signatures and offered to help Monica canvass the area. Over the course of a few days, Monica and Mrs. Thompson managed to gather around 20 signatures from nearby residents. Many were shocked to learn that the homeowner association was insisting on the removal of a small children's playhouse, especially since it was hidden away in the backyard. Once she had the signatures, Monica drafted a formal appeal letter to the homeowner association. In the letter, she carefully explained the situation, reiterating that the playhouse was small, tastefully designed, and in no way visible from the street or any adjacent properties. She included a collection of photographs showing the playhouse from different angles in the backyard, hoping this visual evidence would strengthen her case. Along with the petition, she submitted her letter to the homeowner association office, feeling cautiously optimistic. Perhaps, she thought, with enough support from her neighbors, the homeowner association might reconsider. A week passed, and then another, with no response from the homeowner association. Monica's optimism began to wane as the silence stretched on. Then, one Friday afternoon, an email notification appeared in her inbox. It was a message from the homeowner association board, acknowledging her appeal but stating that they required an in-person inspection before they could make a final decision. Monica was simultaneously relieved and wary. An inspection might mean they were willing to take a closer look, but it also suggested that they were taking this matter very seriously. Still, it was a chance to plead her case face-to-face, and she was determined to make the most of it. The inspection was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Monica spent the days leading up to it meticulously preparing. She reviewed the homeowner association guidelines, making notes on anything that could bolster her argument. She even contacted a friend who had some legal experience to ensure she understood her rights as a homeowner. Her friend explained that while homeowner associations could impose certain aesthetic restrictions, they were also required to follow due process and respect individual property rights. Feeling armed with information, Monica was as ready as she could be. When Wednesday morning arrived, Monica found herself uncharacteristically nervous. She had planned to face the inspection team alone, but to her surprise, Tom had taken the morning off to join her. "I couldn't let you deal with this alone," he said with a reassuring smile. They stood together in their backyard, watching as 3 members of the homeowner association board walked down the side of their house toward the playhouse. At the front of the group was Linda, the representative Monica had spoken with over the phone. Behind her were 2 board members whom Monica recognized from neighborhood events but had never interacted with personally. Their expressions were neutral, almost stern, as they approached, clipboards in hand. "Good morning," Monica greeted them, trying to keep her voice steady and polite. Linda nodded curtly, while the other 2 board members offered quick, polite smiles. "Let's get started," Linda said, glancing around the backyard. Her gaze settled on the playhouse, and Monica could almost feel the judgment emanating from her. Monica led them closer to the playhouse, explaining as they walked that the structure was designed to blend seamlessly with the natural landscape of the yard. She highlighted the thoughtful details they'd put into the design, the soft pastel colors, the way it nestled under the tree, and its compact size. Linda listened, but didn't seem particularly interested, jotting notes on her clipboard as Monica spoke. One of the other board members, a tall man named Mr. Collins, stepped forward to examine the playhouse more closely. "It's certainly small," he remarked, his tone more neutral than Linda's, "and it's well constructed. I can see the effort that went into it." For a moment, Monica felt a flicker of hope perhaps Mr. Collins could be an ally. But Linda remained unmoved. She pointed to a section of the homeowner association guidelines, indicating a clause about non-standard structures and additional buildings that might set a precedent for further construction. Monica read along, trying to understand how a children's playhouse could be construed as a precedent-setting additional building. She explained again that it was purely decorative and functional for their children's play, not a permanent structure meant for adult use or habitation. "But once one exception is made," Linda countered, "it opens the door for others. We can't risk the neighborhood becoming cluttered with structures that don't align with the community's standards. If we allow your playhouse, what's to stop other residents from building similar structures? Before long, it will affect property values." Tom stepped in, his voice calm but firm. "We're not asking for an exception that would change the whole community. We're asking for understanding that this playhouse, tucked away and out of view, doesn't detract from anyone else's property." He motioned toward the nearby fence. "Our neighbors have no issue with it. We have their signatures here, supporting the playhouse." Linda glanced at the signatures but didn't take them. Instead, she gestured toward Mr. Collins and the third board member, Mrs. Gray, and said, "We'll consider the matter, but this decision isn't made by popular vote. The board's job is to maintain the community's standards objectively, not based on neighborly support." At this point, Monica's frustration was beginning to bubble up. She took a deep breath, holding back her immediate reaction. It felt as though the homeowner association was hiding behind its rules, using vague terms like standards and precedent without fully acknowledging the reality of their family's situation. To her, it was beginning to feel less like a fair review and more like a formality that would inevitably end in the board enforcing its original decision. After what felt like an eternity of silent note-taking, Linda finally closed her clipboard and looked at Monica and Tom. "We'll review your appeal and notify you of our decision within a week," she said. Her tone was as impersonal as ever, giving no indication of whether the inspection had swayed her opinion. As the board members made their way back down the side of the house, Monica felt a surge of anger mixed with helplessness. She had tried to approach the situation diplomatically, to demonstrate her respect for the homeowner association's process, but it seemed as if her efforts had fallen on deaf ears. Watching them walk away, she felt a strong sense of injustice, a feeling that the very institution meant to protect neighborhood harmony was, in this case, overstepping its bounds. That evening, Monica and Tom sat together on the porch, going over everything that had happened during the inspection. "It just doesn't make sense," Monica sighed, resting her head in her hands. "We're not trying to change anything about the neighborhood. We just wanted a little playhouse for the kids. How is that so wrong?" Tom put his arm around her, offering comfort. "I know, Mon. But we have to remember that sometimes homeowner associations get too caught up in rules to see the bigger picture. I just wish there was someone on the board who could understand." Over the next week, Monica found herself consumed with worry. She avoided walking past the playhouse, fearing it might be her last chance to see it standing. She imagined Emma's disappointment, the tears and confusion that would follow if they had to take it down. It wasn't just about the structure itself, it was about the principle of being able to make their home truly theirs, to give their children a happy, creative space within the safety of their backyard. When the homeowner association's final decision letter finally arrived, Monica's hands shook as she opened it. The board had voted to uphold their original decision. The playhouse, they stated, was indeed in violation of homeowner association regulations and would need to be removed within 2 weeks. Failure to comply would result in daily fines. Reading the letter, Monica felt a mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. Despite all her efforts, it seemed as though the homeowner association's power was absolute, immune to reason or compromise. The playhouse had become a symbol, not just of her children's joy, but of a principle that now felt trampled by bureaucracy. But as she looked out at the little castle in the backyard, she knew this wasn't over. The homeowner association's final decision letter lay in Monica's lap, its cold, impersonal language almost mocking her. The words non-compliant structure and mandatory removal were like stones weighing on her chest. Despite their appeal, their efforts, and the support of their neighbors, the board had chosen to stand firm. For the past several days, Monica had held on to the hope that reason would prevail, that the homeowner association would recognize the harmlessness of the playhouse and allow it to remain. Now, that hope felt naive, almost foolish. She looked over at Tom, who was reading the letter in silence, his jaw set in frustration. The letter allowed them 2 weeks to dismantle the playhouse, after which the homeowner association would begin imposing daily fines for non-compliance. Monica imagined the joy in her children's faces as they played in their little castle and felt a surge of anger. How could something so innocent and joyful be met with such resistance? For a moment she felt like giving in, just tearing down the playhouse and moving on. But deep down, she knew that would be a betrayal not only of their children's happiness but also of their right to create a home that reflected their family's values and dreams. As Monica sat with her thoughts, an idea began to form, tentative but persistent. Maybe there was another way, a middle ground that could satisfy both her family and the homeowner association. She knew the board was fixated on the concept of aesthetic standards and precedent, and it was clear they viewed the playhouse as some kind of slippery slope. What if there was a way to demonstrate that the playhouse could be modified to align with their standards without losing its essence? Tom seemed to read her mind. "Do you think there's a way to compromise?" he asked, his tone hopeful but cautious. Monica nodded slowly. "I think it's worth a shot," she replied. "We've already put in so much work to make it as unobtrusive as possible, but maybe if we make a few adjustments, they'll be willing to meet us halfway." With a renewed sense of purpose, Monica and Tom began brainstorming ways to make the playhouse even less noticeable. They considered repainting it in neutral tones that would blend seamlessly with the natural colors of the backyard. Perhaps they could also add some low shrubbery around the base of the playhouse to further disguise it from view. Their goal was to make the playhouse blend so perfectly into the background that it would become almost invisible, removing any basis for the homeowner association's objections. The next day, Monica contacted the homeowner association and requested one final meeting. She explained that she and Tom were willing to make modifications to the playhouse in order to bring it more in line with the neighborhood's aesthetic guidelines. To her surprise, Linda agreed to the meeting, though she warned Monica that the board's stance remained unchanged. Despite this, Monica felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps if they presented their ideas clearly and respectfully, the board might see that a compromise was possible. On the morning of the meeting, Monica and Tom arranged a small presentation in their backyard. They had repainted the playhouse in soft, earth-toned colors, a blend of beige and pale green that complemented the natural landscape. Around the base of the playhouse, they had planted a variety of small shrubs, their leaves soft and feathery, adding a touch of greenery that framed the playhouse and further camouflaged it. The overall effect was subtle and elegant, transforming the playhouse into a charming part of the garden rather than a standalone structure. When Linda and two other board members arrived, Monica could sense their surprise. Linda's usually impassive face showed a flicker of acknowledgement as she took in the changes. Monica walked them through her modifications, explaining that the playhouse was now designed to harmonize with the natural elements of the yard. She emphasized that it was no longer a bold, brightly painted structure, but rather a gentle addition to the backyard, respectful of the neighborhood's standards. Linda listened intently, and Monica felt a small spark of hope. She could see the board members exchange glances, their expressions softened by the visual impact of the changes. Finally, Linda spoke, her tone less curt than usual. "I appreciate the effort you've put into these adjustments, Monica. This is certainly more in line with what we aim for in the community." But she paused, as if considering her next words carefully. There were still concerns about setting a precedent. Monica took a deep breath, prepared for this. "Linda, I understand the importance of maintaining standards, but this isn't about opening the door to a flood of new structures. It's about a small playhouse that brings joy to two children and doesn't harm anyone's enjoyment of their own space. If we can agree on these modifications, I think we can set a different kind of precedent, one of flexibility and understanding." Linda glanced at her fellow board members, both of whom nodded subtly. After a moment of silence, Linda sighed and nodded. "I think we can make an exception, given the adjustments you've made," she said, finally relenting. "We'll consider this matter resolved as long as the playhouse remains as it is now. But please understand, this is a unique decision based on specific circumstances." Monica felt a wave of relief wash over her. She thanked Linda and the board members sincerely, grateful that they had chosen to see reason and meet her halfway. As the homeowner association representatives left, she and Tom shared a smile, finally feeling as though they could truly settle into their home without the constant fear of unwarranted restrictions. Over the following days, Monica and Tom made a few final touches to the playhouse, adding a soft doormat and a tiny bird feeder nearby, creating a picturesque nook in their backyard that delighted Emma and Ben. Their children were blissfully unaware of the battle that had taken place, but for Monica, the playhouse now held a deeper significance. It wasn't just a play space, it was a testament to the power of persistence, compromise, and community. By standing her ground, she had not only preserved a part of her children's joy, but also established a new sense of respect within the neighborhood. In the weeks that followed, Monica noticed subtle shifts in her interactions with the homeowner association. Linda, once cold and formal, now greeted her with a slight nod whenever they crossed paths. Some neighbors even congratulated her for standing up for herself, quietly sharing their own frustrations with the homeowner association's sometimes overzealous approach. In a strange way, the ordeal had brought the neighborhood closer together, revealing a shared desire for balance between individuality and community standards. One warm Saturday afternoon, as Monica watched Emma and Ben play in their castle, she felt a profound sense of contentment. The playhouse was still standing, nestled under the old oak tree, blending naturally with the backyard. It was a small victory, but one that reminded her of the importance of resilience and the value of creating a space that truly felt like home. The homeowner association, meanwhile, seemed to soften in their approach to enforcement. The board had gained a renewed perspective, realizing that sometimes rigid adherence to rules wasn't as important as the happiness and harmony of the community. Other families began to add small, tasteful touches to their own backyards, carefully respecting homeowner association guidelines but finding ways to personalize their spaces. The neighborhood gradually transformed into a place where creativity and compliance coexisted, each family contributing its own unique charm within the shared community. As Monica watched her children grow, she often thought back to the battle over the playhouse. It was a reminder of the importance of fighting for what mattered, even in the face of opposition, and the beauty of finding middle ground. Her children's laughter echoed through the backyard, blending with the rustling leaves and the distant hum of neighborhood life, a sound that would forever remind her of the victory she had won, not only for her family but for the spirit of the community as a whole.